The hall was packed, bright lights flooding the stage as cameras clicked without pause. Reporters filled every corner, whispering over one another, their eyes fixed on the famous faces lined up at the long table. In the center sat Mel Gibson, dressed in a sharp black suit, his expression calm but unreadable. The event was billed as a dialogue on faith, a gathering of voices to speak on Christianity in a broken, divided world. Everyone expected familiar words, the kind that make headlines for a day and disappear the next. Then the doors at the back opened, and silence rippled through the room. Ibrahim Traoré walked in slowly, wearing a plain white robe, his steps measured, his face calm like still water. His simplicity stood out against the polished suits and glittering jewelry around him. Some guests exchanged quick looks, others smirked softly, their eyes saying what their lips did not. What is he doing here? The cameras turned to him, flashes bursting like tiny storms. But Ibrahim didn't flinch. He moved to his seat at the far end of the table, folding his hands, listening as if he had all the time in the world. The moderator cleared his throat, voice sharp through the microphone. President Traore, he began. Some say Christianity's roots were used as a tool during colonial times. How do you see its role today? The question hung in the air like a blade. Ibrahim didn't answer right away. The silence stretched so long the clicking of cameras almost stopped. Then he lifted his head, his voice low, calm, and clear. Do you really believe Jesus came for one race? Every sound in the room died at once. Even the cameras paused as if they, too, were listening. The shot cut to Mel Gibson. His hand gripped the microphone tighter, and his eyes told a story no one was ready to hear. The room filled with voices as the discussion moved from one speaker to another, each giving long statements about theology, history, and cultural influence. Ibrahim sat quietly, his hands folded on the table, eyes lowered, listening to every word without interruption. They spoke as if they owned the faith, as if the story of Jesus belonged only to them. Some used polished words about civilization, others smiled when they spoke of guiding the world. Ibrahim stayed silent, but inside his mind, old memories rose like smoke from a fire. He remembered his early years in diplomacy, when Western reporters barely wrote his name right, when interview requests were denied because no one would care about an African leader speaking on faith. He remembered sitting in a grand hall in Europe, listening as a man with a sharp suit and a soft smile said, "Your people have faith, yes, but it is mixed with tribal beliefs." He had smiled back that day, not because he agreed, but because silence was his shield. There were moments worse than words. A leaked email once reached him, Hollywood executives laughing about how African Christianity was colorful but not marketable. Another time, he overheard two producers debating if Africans were ready for a serious biblical epic, as if faith needed permission. Every insult, every quiet dismissal left a scar that no one could see, but those scars built his strength. He never answered with anger, he chose patience like armor. Now, sitting in this hall, he could feel those same looks around him, the quick glances, the hidden smirks. A reporter leaned to another and whispered, "Why is he even on this panel?" Ibrahim heard it, but his face didn't move. His aide leaned close and muttered under his breath, "Keep your answers short, Mr. Traore." Ibrahim gave no reply, only a small nod. Inside, he whispered to himself, "Lord, let the truth be enough." The speeches dragged on. A famous author spoke about how Western values had shaped Christianity's message, while another man in a blue tie said, "The world needs us to protect the real meaning of the gospel." Ibrahim's fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the table, but his face stayed calm. He looked down at his hands, breathing slow, letting their words roll over him like water over stone. The air felt heavy with pride, and he could sense the hunger in their voices to keep control of a story that was never theirs to own. And then it came, the voice of the moderator, cutting through the noise with a tone sharp as glass. "Now," he said, leaning forward toward the microphone, "Mr. Traore, the world wants your answer." The room turned to him. Cameras tilted, lights burned brighter, and in that small pause, you could hear the weight of centuries pressing down. The lights burned bright on Ibrahim's face as he lifted his head, the quiet in the hall so deep you could hear a breath from the back row. Cameras froze in midair, reporters clutching their pens but forgetting to write. His eyes were calm, steady like a man standing before a storm that no longer scares him. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost gentle, but it carried through every corner of the room. "When I was a boy," he began, "I heard the name of Jesus from a man who carried a whip." The words cut through the silence like a blade, making the air heavier. Some heads turned, others stiffened in their chairs. He didn't raise his voice, but every word landed like a stone in still water. "They told us he was white, that he came with power and chains, that his love wore the face of the men who burned our fields. But love is not a weapon. Love does not conquer. And Jesus was love. He paused, looking around the room, his eyes calm yet burning with truth. Then he spoke again, slower this time. Jesus was not white. He was not European. He was love, and love does not colonize. A reporter's hand fell from his notebook. Someone in the back drew in a sharp breath. The hall was still, the weight of his words pressing on every soul. If you think your skin makes you closer to him, Ibrahim said, his voice steady, you've never understood his cross. The silence that followed felt holy, as if the world itself had stopped to listen. The cameras no longer clicked, even the lights seemed softer. On the far side of the stage, Mel Gibson lowered his head, his hands gripping the mic like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His eyes filled with tears he could not hide, old memories rushing back, voices from the past echoing in his mind, mistakes he could never erase. He whispered to himself, broken and quiet, he's right. Ibrahim's voice rose again, not in anger but in strength, flowing like a river breaking a dam, unstoppable yet calm. If Jesus walked in today, he said, every word like a drumbeat in the soul, he would not ask where you come from. He would ask, who you loved. The words settled in the air like a prayer no one wanted to end. Then silence, deep, crushing silence, as if the whole world was holding its breath. The hall was empty now, but the world outside was louder than ever. Clips of Ibrahim's words spread like fire across every screen. Headlines flashing in bold, African leader, speaks gospel truth to Hollywood. Millions shared the moment, replaying the silence. The calm voice that broke centuries of pride. In a small dressing room behind the stage, Mel Gibson sat alone, the noise of the crowd gone, just the soft hum of his phone in his hand. He scrolled through post after post, seeing Ibrahim's face, hearing his voice again and again. Each word felt heavier now, pressing against old wounds he thought had healed. His eyes burned as tears slipped down without warning. He whispered to no one, his voice cracking, thank you. He reached for his phone to call, but stopped, staring at the screen, his hand frozen. Somewhere outside, Ibrahim walked slowly through the night, his white robe brushing the quiet pavement. No lights, no cheers, no cameras following him now. The sky above was dark and endless, and under it, he prayed softly, Lord, let these words do more than echo. Behind him, chaos grew, reporters racing to find him, people who ignored him hours ago now begging for an interview, their voices full of urgency. In an office across town, a studio executive sat in the glow of a laptop screen, his face pale as apology statements were typed and sent. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Every headline was a mirror showing what he had laughed at, what he had denied. He leaned back in his chair, defeated, staring at the ceiling. Ibrahim reached his hotel room and closed the door gently. No noise, no cameras, only the soft rustle of pages. As he opened a small Bible worn from years of touch, he took a pen and wrote in the margin, slow and steady, truth never needs a crown. He closed the book, placed it on the table, and sat in silence, the weight of the day folding into the quiet. And as the night stretched on, the voice of the narrator carried the truth like a whisper that could not be broken. That night, the world remembered that love has no color, and neither does the cross.